Somebody signed this, but it wasn't Dale Earnhardt.
Oh.
Throughout Pawn Star's history, the shop has seen its fair share of incredible items. But not all that glitters is gold. We've dug up some memorable episodes where sellers thought they had rare, valuable items, only to have their hopes crushed when the truth came out. Let's take a look at these fakes and forgeries. Scene 1, Dale Earnhardt's tire. In this classic episode of Pawn Stars, a customer brought in what he believed was a tire signed by NASCAR legend Dale Earnhardt, commemorating his monumental win at the 1998 Daytona 500. Both Rick and Cory were intrigued by the potential value, given Earnhardt's status as the Intimidator.
Dale Earnhardt's NASCAR accomplishments are legendary. The guy won 76 races, 7 Winston Cup championships, and the Daytona 500. I mean, you gotta be pretty badass to earn a nickname the Intimidator.
However, their curiosity was met with skepticism. Rick immediately questioned the legitimacy, noting that a certificate of authenticity wasn't enough to guarantee it was genuine. Anyone can print out a piece of paper, he warned.
The problem I have with certificates like that, anybody can make them.
To be certain, they brought in an expert to analyze the signature. After careful examination, the expert pointed out several inconsistencies, such as the formation of the letters. This isn't Dale Earnhardt's signature, he concluded. The customer left disappointed, and this episode highlighted how the sport memorabilia market is filled with forgeries. Scene 2, Jimi Hendrix's signature. A seller brought in what they claimed was a handwritten poem by music legend Jimi Hendrix, gifted to them after investing in a relative's band. Excited by the story, Rick wanted to believe it but called in an expert to examine the piece. Right away, the expert noticed some red flags. Hendrix was known for writing with a ballpoint pen, but this poem was in felt tip, which was unusual. More concerns arose over the handwriting itself, particularly the unusual I.
The other thing we have to look at is the letter structures. The capital I has a very squiggly line for the top bar. That's not something I've seen before. It's usually block type lettering.
And the smaller printed style of the signature, which didn't match Hendrix's usual large flowing cursive. In the end, the expert confirmed that the poem wasn't authentic, dealing a harsh blow to the seller, who left with dashed hopes. Scene 3, Mark Twain's stock certificate. A woman brought in a rare stock certificate linked to the legendary author Mark Twain, believing it could be worth around $500 due to its historical significance. The certificate traced back to the Goodman Gold and Silver Mining Company in Virginia City, Nevada, where Twain once worked as a journalist. Upon closer inspection, however, Rick grew suspicious. The certificate lacked the intricate designs typical of the 1800s, which were meant to prevent forgery. Moreover, it was signed Mark Twain instead of Samuel Clemens, Twain's real name, a rare occurrence on legal documents. After further analysis, it became clear that the certificate was a well-crafted fake, likely produced as a novelty in the 1920s.
Just everything about it screams fake. This was probably made in the 1920s, 1930s, and some guy was making a lot of money selling a lot of these. I wish it was real. I mean, he's one of my favorite characters in history.
Okay.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. I'm really disappointed the stock certificate was a fake. Now I guess I'll just have to win some money at the casino.
Scene 4, John Wayne's hat. A customer proudly presented what he believed was a hat worn by the legendary John Wayne, seeking $200 for the piece. While the style was reminiscent of hats used in Wayne's films, Rick was hesitant due to the lack of documentation. An expert in movie props was called in to evaluate the item. While the hat could potentially have been from Rio Bravo, the expert found too many inconsistencies and concluded it likely wasn't Wayne's. Without concrete proof, the deal fell through, leaving the customer without a sale.
What about the tag from the wardrobe department?
You could write a dozen of these up, put them in a dozen hats. It doesn't make any difference. You can't purchase something on the legend. You got to have some facts behind it.
Scene 5, Ivory Tusk. In this segment, a customer brought in what they believed to be an authentic ivory tusk from a Taipei market. Expecting to pawn it for up to $1,500, the seller was surprised when Rick quickly identified it as a segmented bone tusk, a tourist replica.
What do we got here?
An ivory tusk.
Okay. And what do you want to do with it?
I want to pawn it for 7 to 10 days.
Okay.
I need some money between now and 4 o'clock.
So how'd you get this thing?
I bought it in Taipei.
How much did you pay for it?
I paid a lot.
Okay. Unfortunately, it's not ivory.
Rick explained that real ivory would be solid, whereas this item's porous texture and wooden core revealed it as a cheap imitation. Despite its appearance, Rick offered $100, which the customer declined, leaving disillusioned about the Tusk's true value.
Really interested in buying ivory anymore. I mean, ivory used to be needed for billiard balls, concert pianos, and a few other things. Nowadays, you have synthetics. I don't like the process of getting ivory. I don't like the politics of it. I don't like anything about it. How much were you looking to get out of it?
1,000 to 15.
There's no way. I would loan you like $100 on this.
No.
Okay, that's what I can do.
Do a little bit better.
There's no way I can do better.
Scene 6. Tiffany belt buckles. A seller brought in a collection of Wells Fargo belt buckles, supposedly crafted by Tiffany & Co., and sought $500 each. The seller claimed they were once owned by a Montana museum.
What do you have here?
I have some Wells Fargo belt buckles made by Tiffany.
A Wells Fargo belt buckle from Tiffany is really rare.
Wow.
So where did you get these?
I got them here in town at a flea market. The guy I bought them from a museum in Montana in 1969.
Okay.
And this is the marking of Tiffany on the back. All three have it.
Okay, do you know who these guys are?
Mr. Wells and Mr. Fargo.
That's correct.
Rick was intrigued but skeptical. Tiffany belt buckles could be worth tens of thousands, but fakes were common. After inspecting the buckles, Rick spotted a key inconsistency. The latches had been soldered over the Tiffany logo, something the prestigious brand would never do. The buckles were likely part of a 1970s antiques fraud trend. Despite the seller's insistence, Rick passed on the deal, wary of the buckle's dubious origins.
Makes me feel terrible when this happens. At least it was only $100.
Yeah, it's been a lot worse.
I never buy anything fake, no matter what. Just having it around the shop is risky, because an employee might think it's genuine and sell it. That could turn into a real nightmare.
Scene 7. Abraham Lincoln's signature scandal. A customer strolled in with a portrait of Abraham Lincoln, confidently stating that it had the president's real signature on it. Given Lincoln's historical importance, they were expecting a big payout. At first glance, Rick was intrigued, but something didn't sit right. He noticed the ink hadn't faded or rusted the way it typically does on documents from the 1800s, due to the iron content in inks of that era. Sensing something was off, Rick called in an expert to take a closer look. The expert quickly pointed out more inconsistencies, especially in the signature style and aging process. As it turns out, the signature likely came from Joseph Causey, a well-known forger who specialized in faking signatures of American historical figures. Even worse, this wasn't just a Causey forgery. It was a copy of one of his forgeries, making the portrait completely worthless. The customer left disappointed, and it was another lesson in how the world of historical memorabilia is filled with fakes.
Joseph Causey was one of the most famous forgers in American history. Causey faked everyone, from Benjamin Franklin to George Washington, and sold them to big-time collectors. He even forged a copy of the Declaration of Independence.
This is something that was done, I believe, 1920s, 1930s.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He did a great Abraham Lincoln signature. Okay, I mean, it was identical, except for some reason, he always lined up the A with the Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln's A was always below the L. This is lined up perfectly.
Okay.
So if you ever see the A lined up with the Lincoln, it's Joseph Causey.
So, I mean, it worth anything?
Believe it or not, the forgeries by Causey are worth a little bit of money.
Really?
Because it was by a famous forger.
Scene 8. Baby rattle. A customer walked into the shop with what looked like a charming sterling silver baby rattle from the early 1800s. The delicate design and historical appeal caught Rick's attention right away, and he was eager to find out more about its backstory. However, as he examined it more closely, he began to notice some red flags that raised his suspicions. For starters, the solder used to hold the pieces together was made of pewter, which isn't typically found in genuine sterling silver pieces from that era. Additionally, there was a noticeable green corrosion on the solder, a sign of age and wear that hinted at a less than authentic origin. The craftsmanship, while attractive, didn't quite match the level of detail expected from an original piece of that time. Soon, it became clear that this rattle was actually a reproduction rather than the genuine article. Unfortunately, the customer left without a sale, reinforcing how even the most niche items can be faked.
People are faking baby rattles?
People fake everything, okay? It looks like it's been reproduced by somebody. It just doesn't look right. I'm gonna pass.
I think he's wrong because I think they wouldn't put that big a piece of pearl on something that was faked. And I don't see why somebody would fake something that
Scene 9. Napoleon Bonaparte's letter. A customer walked into the shop with an eye-catching claim. A letter signed by Napoleon Bonaparte himself. With a certificate of authenticity in hand, the seller was dreaming of a $10,000 payday. Intrigued by the potential, Cory negotiated and purchased the letter for $2,000, feeling optimistic about the deal. Wanting to ensure its legitimacy, Cory sent the letter to an expert for verification. As the expert examined it, they noticed that while the letter captured Napoleon's tone, the paper and ink were all wrong for that era. It turned out to be a modern forgery, leaving Cory's $2,000 investment nearly worthless. This experience served as a tough reminder that even the most exciting finds can be deceptive.
And they would have written it down in manuscript, and he would have sent these all over Europe to try and explain to people what had happened. So if you've got one of the original copies that would have been written out on the battlefield, that would be priceless. The thing is, this is not one of those original manuscript copies.
Scene 10. Apsara dancer statue. Finally, a customer named Ray brought in a sandstone statue he claimed was an ancient Apsara dancer from the 10th century. He sought $5,000 for the piece, but Rick was immediately skeptical due to the statue's pristine condition. An expert in Indian art was called in to assess the piece and quickly noted several inconsistencies, including the face, which appeared more Cambodian than Indian. In the end, the expert revealed the statue was a modern replica made within the last century. Despite the disappointment, Ray accepted Rick's offer of $800 for the replica art.
Pretty much identical. So, I'm going to have to say it was a replication done in Cambodia and is probably like around maybe 75 to 150 years old.
What's something like this go for?
$1,200 to maybe like $2,200 on the upside.
Okay.
Would be what you're looking at.
As we wrap up this look at forgeries, fakes, and replicas, it's a good reminder to always get a solid expert opinion when dealing with collectibles. Whether it's sports gear, historic papers, or movie props, things aren't always what they seem. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more cool content.